The McCallister house was quiet, the chaos of Christmas morning fading into the background as Kevin sat cross-legged on his bedroom floor. The large pile of presents under the tree didn't interest him. What held his attention was the battered camcorder clutched in his hands. The device whirred softly as Kevin rewound the tape to the beginning. He pressed play and the tiny screen flickered to life, displaying grainy footage of the previous night's events. Kevin had set up the camera in a corner of the living room just before the wet bandits arrived. The angle wasn't perfect, but it captured enough. The clattering of paint cans, the crunch of shattered ornaments, the anguished screams of Harry and Marv as they fell victim to his traps. He hit pause on the image of Marv's shoe, impaled by a nail, zooming in to study the man's expression. Kevin tilted his head, his lips curving into a faint smile. "They never saw it coming," he murmured to himself. Downstairs, the McCallisters bustled about, trying to salvage the remnants of their vacation. Police officers had come and gone, hauling Harry and Marv off to jail and leaving behind a half-hearted reassurance that the house was safe. But Kevin didn't feel safe, not in the way he thought he should. He didn't feel afraid either. What he felt was something new, an exhilaration that buzzed under his skin whenever he replayed the tape. The memory of Harry's head bursting into flames, Marv's anguished yelps as he was electrocuted. It was more than funny, it was satisfying. Kevin reached for a notebook, flipping through pages of hand-drawn schematics. The traps he'd created were crudely sketched, each accompanied by detailed notes. Next to the tarantula scene he'd written, "Fear response is immediate, causes disorientation." For the paint can trap, blunt force trauma, effective deterrent, potential for concussion. He stopped at a new page, blank except for the title scrawled across the top. Improvements. Kevin tapped his pencil against the page, his mind already racing. The first test came a week later. Kevin stood in the backyard, staring down at an old rusted toolbox he'd filled with spare nails, screws, and shards of glass. He'd rigged it to a tripwire positioned carefully across the back gate. His heart raced as he watched his neighbor, Old Man Marley, approach the gate carrying a shovel over his shoulder. Kevin's stomach churned. "It's just a test," he whispered to himself. "He'll be fine." As Marley stepped over the tripwire, Kevin's breath hitched. The box toppled, spilling its contents harmlessly onto the snow. Marley turned, frowning at the mess before shaking his head and walking away. Kevin exhaled slowly, a mix of relief and disappointment swirling in his chest. "Needs better timing," he muttered, jotting down a note in his book. By spring, Kevin's experiments had grown more ambitious. He'd built a spring-loaded device in the garage, capable of launching a brick across the room with startling precision. He tested it on targets at first, old soda cans, cardboard cutouts of burglars. But one afternoon, when a stray raccoon wandered into the garage, Kevin hesitated. The animal sniffed the air, unaware of the pressure plate beneath its paws. Kevin's finger hovered over the release switch, his pulse pounding in his ears. "Just a test," he whispered again, his voice shaking. The brick fired. The raccoon screeched, collapsing into a lifeless heap. Kevin stared at the scene, his chest tight. For a moment, he felt sick, his hands trembling as he dropped the switch. But then the thrill returned, sharp and undeniable. He grabbed his notebook, scribbling furiously. Pressure plate sensitivity, optimal, impact, lethal. The turning point came during a conversation with his mother, Kate. "Kevin, are you okay?" she asked one evening, her brow furrowed with concern. Kevin looked up from his notebook, his expression carefully neutral. "Yeah, why?" Kate hesitated, glancing at the crude sketches scattered across his desk. "You've been spending a lot of time alone lately. And these traps of yours, they're just for fun, right? Of course, Kevin said quickly, offering her his most innocent smile. Just for fun. Kate smiled faintly, though the worry didn't leave her eyes. All right, just be careful, okay? As she left the room, Kevin's smile faded. He stared at his notebook, his mind drifting back to the wet bandits, to the way they'd screamed and begged as they stumbled through his house. Fun, he thought. It wasn't just fun, it was justice. That night, Kevin sat in his room, his notebook open to a fresh page. He wrote a single word at the top, underlining it twice: revenge. His pencil hovered over the page before he added another note, his hand steady and deliberate. Pain isn't just punishment, it's art. As he closed the book, the faint sound of laughter escaped his lips. In the corner of his room, the camcorder's red light blinked steadily, recording every moment. The workshop was buried deep beneath the dilapidated remnants of the McCallister house. Kevin stood in the center of the room, his face illuminated by the flickering glow of a dozen monitors. Each screen displayed a different schematic, a maze of gears, pulleys, and pressure plates that made up his ever-growing arsenal of traps. He picked up a mask from the workbench, a crude but haunting replica of the Jigsaw puppet's face, its cheeks painted with spiraling red circles. Kevin traced a finger over its surface, a faint smile curling his lips. "This'll do," he murmured, setting it aside. The room was a monument to obsession. Blueprints covered the walls, some old and yellowed with age, others fresh and precise. Tools hung in meticulous order, and shelves were lined with jars of nails, screws, and other sharp implements. But the centerpiece of the room was a makeshift throne, a high-backed chair outfitted with jagged spikes and chains. Above it hung a simple phrase, scrawled in blood-red paint: "No escape without understanding." Kevin's life on the surface was an illusion. By day, he played the part of an eccentric recluse, a man who had inherited his parents' wealth and used it to fund his supposed research. He rarely ventured into town, and when he did, his disheveled appearance and distant demeanor ensured that no one asked too many questions. But by night, he was something else entirely. In the shadows, Kevin honed his craft, perfecting the traps that had once been simple pranks. He built devices that didn't just hurt, they maimed, twisted, and destroyed. He kept journals for each one, detailing every component, every possible failure point, and the precise psychological effect he intended to achieve. "The mind breaks long before the body," Kevin would mutter to himself as he worked. The trigger for Kevin's descent into true darkness came on a quiet evening when he received a piece of unexpected news. Sitting at his computer, Kevin scrolled through an online news article. Wet bandits released on parole after serving 20 years. The article was accompanied by mugshots of Harry and Marv. Kevin's hand tightened on the mouse as he stared at the images. Time hadn't been kind to them. Harry's face was lined with deep wrinkles, and Marv's wild hair was now mostly gray. "They're still alive," Kevin whispered, his voice trembling with rage. He leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. Memories of that fateful Christmas flooded back. Their voices, their threats, their screams of pain. "They should have suffered more," he muttered. "They should have paid for what they did." Kevin's eyes flicked to the mask on the workbench, and an idea began to take shape. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. Kevin tracked Harry and Marv's movements, learning their routines and piecing together their new lives. Harry worked part-time as a janitor at a local school, while Marv scraped by doing odd jobs. "They've gone soft," Kevin said, watching from the shadows as Marv struggled to lift a heavy toolbox. Back in his workshop, Kevin began constructing his masterpiece, a labyrinth of traps designed specifically for the wet bandits. Each device was tailored to their crimes. For Marv, there was a chamber filled with electrified wires, a cruel echo of the trap that had once sent him convulsing on the basement stairs. For Harry, there was a room that simulated the sensation of burning flesh, a nod to the blowtorch that had ignited his scalp. And at the center of it all was the throne. Kevin worked tirelessly, his hands moving with the precision of a surgeon. The mask became a permanent fixture on his workbench, its empty eyes watching as he toiled away. On the night of the abduction, Kevin was ready. Harry and Marv, now living together in a dingy apartment, had just returned from a late-night run to a liquor store. They didn't notice the black van parked down the street, or the shadowy figure lurking nearby. Kevin struck quickly, using a knockout gas he'd rigged from an old HVAC system. By the time Harry and Marv realized what was happening, it was too late. The next thing Harry and Marv knew, they were waking up in darkness. Marv groaned, his head pounding as he tried to move. His wrists and ankles were bound, the cold metal of the restraints biting into his skin. "Harry?" he croaked. "What the hell is going on?" Harry's voice came from somewhere nearby, hoarse and angry. "I don't know, but when I find out who's behind this, they're dead." A sudden click echoed through the room, followed by a low, mechanical whir. The lights flickered on, revealing a nightmarish scene. They were in a large, industrial-looking space, surrounded by walls lined with jagged metal and bloodstains. A single screen flickered to life in front of them, displaying the distorted image of Kevin's Jigsaw mask. "Hello, Harry," Kevin's voice said, distorted but unmistakable. "Hello, Marv. Welcome to my home." The two men froze, their eyes widening in terror. "Do you remember me?" Kevin asked, his tone calm and measured. "You should. You broke into my house. You tried to hurt me." Marv's voice shook. It can't be. You're a child?" Kevin interrupted. "Not anymore." The screen flickered, showing footage from their failed burglary. The traps, the injuries, the screams. "I gave you a chance to walk away," Kevin said. "You didn't take it. Now we're gonna play a little game." The cold air in the chamber was suffocating, thick with the scent of rust and decay. Harry squinted against the blinding light overhead, his arms straining against the chains binding him to a metal chair. Beside him, Marv groaned, blinking as he tried to make sense of his surroundings. "Where the hell are we?" Harry growled, his voice hoarse. A sudden mechanical whir filled the air, drawing their attention to a monitor mounted on the far wall. The screen flickered to life, revealing the eerie visage of Kevin's Jigsaw mask. Its painted spirals seemed to twist in the dim light, as if mocking them. "Good evening, Harry." Marv, Kevin's voice intoned, distorted but unmistakable. Marv's eyes widened in disbelief. "No way, it's that kid. The kid from the house." Harry's jaw tightened. "That was 20 years ago. This has to be some kind of sick joke." Kevin's laughter crackled through the speakers, low and menacing. "Oh, it's no joke. You remember me well, don't you? The boy you tried to rob. The boy you underestimated." The screen shifted, showing grainy footage from that fateful Christmas. Harry and Marv slipping on icy steps, screaming as paint cans slammed into their faces, writhing in agony as they stumbled into one trap after another. "Do you know what you taught me that night?" Kevin asked, his voice cold and calculating. "You taught me that pain is a powerful teacher, but you also taught me something else. Some people don't learn unless they suffer." The chains binding Harry and Marv clattered as their chairs jerked forward, pulled by unseen machinery. The room around them shifted, panels in the walls sliding open to reveal jagged saw blades, dripping acid, and a tangle of electrified wires. "Welcome to my game," Kevin continued. "The rules are simple. Survive. Each of you has a chance to escape, but only if you're willing to pay the price for your crimes." Marv whimpered, his eyes darting to the traps around them. "This is insane! We already went to prison! We paid for what we did!" Kevin's mask tilted slightly, as if in mock pity. "Prison wasn't payment. It was a vacation compared to what you put me through. Now let's begin." The first trap activated with a deafening clang. Harry's chair released, dumping him onto the floor in front of a narrow corridor lined with spinning blades. A timer on the wall began to count down from 2 minutes. "Harry," Kevin's voice said, "you always prided yourself on being the brains of the operation. Let's see how smart you are now. Navigate the corridor, and you'll find the key to your freedom." Harry scrambled to his feet, glaring at the monitor. "Screw you, kid, I'm not playing your game." The timer hit 90 seconds and the walls of the corridor began to close, the blades inching closer. Marv's chair released next, dropping him into a shallow pit filled with shattered glass and exposed wiring. Kevin's voice crackled to life again. "And Marv, you were always the reckless one. Clumsy, destructive. Let's see how far you'll go to avoid getting zapped." As the traps activated, the room descended into chaos. Harry cursed as he ducked beneath spinning blades, his breath coming in short, panicked gasps. The corridor seemed to stretch endlessly, the key tantalizingly out of reach. Behind him, Marv flailed in the pit, shards of glass slicing into his arms and legs as he tried to avoid the electrified wires. "I can't do this," Marv wailed, his voice cracking. "You don't have a choice," Kevin's voice retorted, his tone devoid of sympathy. "Pain is the only way forward." Harry reached the end of the corridor, his chest heaving as he grabbed the key. But as he turned to leave, a trapdoor beneath him sprang open, and he fell into a second chamber. Kevin's laughter echoed through the room. "Did you think it would be that easy, Harry? The game isn't over yet." Harry landed in a dimly lit space, his legs giving out beneath him. Across the room, Marv was dragged through a side entrance, bleeding and trembling. They were face to face now, both battered and broken. "You bast," Harry began, but a sharp whir interrupted him. A new monitor flickered on, showing Kevin's mask. "Now, for the final challenge," Kevin said. "Only one of you will leave this room alive. The choice is yours." The lights dimmed, leaving Harry and Marv in darkness. A single spotlight illuminated a lever in the center of the room. Kevin's voice returned, softer but no less menacing. "Pull the lever and the other dies. Refuse and you both perish. Decide." Marv's breath came in shallow gasps. "Harry, we can't do this. We can't kill each other." Harry's face twisted in fury. "Speak for yourself." He lunged for the lever, but Marv tackled him, the two grappling on the floor as the room's walls began to close in. Kevin watched from his hidden vantage point, his lips curling into a grim smile. "They'll learn," he whispered to himself, "one way or another." The walls of the chamber creaked ominously as they inched closer, the sound grinding into Harry and Marv's already frayed nerves. They wrestled on the floor, their battered bodies slipping against the blood and sweat that now coated the surface. "You pull that lever and I swear I'll..." Harry growled, his fingers clawing at Marv's face. Marv shoved him back, his voice rising in panic. "You'll what? Kill me. You heard him. We're both dead if we don't figure this out." Above them, Kevin's voice crackled through the speakers, calm and deliberate. "Fascinating," he said, as though observing lab rats. "Your survival instincts are stronger than I thought, but let's see how far those instincts will carry you." A trapdoor in the floor slid open, revealing a staircase leading down into the darkness. The walls halted their advance, and a new timer appeared on the monitor. 10 o'clock, Kevin's voice returned, now colder. The choice still stands. Pull the lever and sacrifice one of you to save the other, or take the stairs and face the next challenge together. But remember, time is not on your side. Harry pushed himself to his feet, his chest heaving. You're sick, kid. You know that? Sick. Kevin's distorted chuckle echoed through the chamber. And you're a thief, Harry. A petty criminal who preyed on the weak. Let's not pretend either of us is innocent. Marv scrambled to the stairs, his voice trembling. We're going down. We'll figure it out together. Harry hesitated, glaring at the lever. Then, with a snarl, he followed Marv into the abyss. The staircase led to a narrow corridor lit by flickering fluorescent lights. The walls were lined with crude drawings, sketches of traps, diagrams of mechanisms, and words scrawled in red paint. Pain is the path to redemption. Marv stumbled, his bloodied hands gripping the wall for support. This guy's been planning this for years, he muttered. Harry's voice was tight with anger. We should have killed him when we had the chance. Marv shot him a look. He was a kid. Yeah, a kid who's turned into a goddamn psycho, Harry snapped. Ahead, the corridor opened into a larger room. At the center stood a platform, surrounded by pools of what appeared to be molten metal. Dangling above the platform were two keys, each attached to a rope. Kevin's voice returned, sharper now. Your next challenge requires teamwork. Both of you must retrieve a key to unlock the exit. But be careful, one misstep, and you'll fall into the molten pit below. Good luck. Marv's legs trembled as he stepped onto the platform, the heat from the molten pools rising in waves. I can't do this, Harry. My legs are jelly. Harry shoved him forward. You're doing it, or we're both dead. The ropes dangled just out of reach, swaying slightly as if mocking their attempts. Harry leapt, his fingers brushing one of the keys before he landed unsteadily on the edge of the platform. Come on, Harry barked, sweat dripping into his eyes. Marv closed his eyes and jumped, grabbing the second key with a desperate lunge. He clung to the rope, his grip slipping as the heat scorched his palms. I can't hold on, he screamed. Hold on, you idiot, Harry growled, securing his key and stepping back onto the platform. With a final burst of effort, Marv swung himself back to safety, collapsing in a heap. The room erupted into a cacophony of alarms as the molten pools began to bubble violently. Kevin's voice rang out again, tinged with amusement. Well done. You've proven you can work together. For now. A door slid open on the far side of the room, revealing another staircase. Harry grabbed Marv by the collar, hauling him to his feet. Let's go, before he changes his mind. The next chamber was smaller, its walls adorned with photographs. Marv froze as he recognized some of the images. Crime scenes from their past robberies. Broken windows, ransacked homes, terrified families. What is this? Marv whispered, his voice barely audible. Kevin's voice returned, low and venomous. A reminder. You didn't just steal objects. You stole security, peace of mind. You left scars on people's lives. Now you get to feel what that's like. The room's center was dominated by a single chair outfitted with chains and spikes. Above it hung a monitor displaying a live feed of Kevin's mask. I was a child when you broke into my home, Kevin said, his voice trembling with controlled rage. You made me feel powerless, afraid, but I learned something that night. Fear can be a weapon. Harry stepped forward, his fists clenched. What the hell do you want from us? Kevin's laughter crackled through the speakers. I already have what I want. Justice. But for you, the game continues. The chair's restraints sprang open, inviting them to sit. Above it, a new timer began to count down. The timer above the chair ticked down with an ominous click, each passing second echoing in the confined chamber. Harry and Marv stood frozen, their faces pale and streaked with sweat. "What now?" Marv croaked, his voice trembling. Kevin's voice came through the speakers, colder than ever. "Now you face your reckoning. Only one of you will leave this room alive. The other will stay behind, as an example." Harry's eyes darted to the chair, its jagged restraints glinting in the dim light. "You're out of your damn mind, kid." Kevin's laugh was low and mocking. "I'm not a kid anymore, Harry. I'm what you made me." The screen flickered, displaying images from Kevin's childhood. The traps, the chaos, the look of terror in Harry and Marv's eyes as they stumbled through his house. "You both taught me something important," Kevin said. "Pain isn't just punishment, it's clarity. And today you'll learn that lesson." The monitor shifted to reveal the rules. One must sacrifice the other. If no decision is made before the timer runs out, the room will fill with gas, and neither of you will leave. Marv's breathing quickened as he backed away from the chair. "Harry, we can't do this. There's gotta be another way." Harry sneered, his eyes narrowing. "You heard him, Marv. No other way out." He lunged at Marv, shoving him toward the chair. Marv stumbled, his hands flailing for something to grab onto. "No, don't do this." Harry didn't respond. His face was a mask of desperation as he wrestled Marv toward the restraints. "It's you or me." Marv fought back, his voice cracking with panic. "We're supposed to be a team. We've always been a team." Above them, the timer ticked relentlessly towards 0. Kevin's voice returned, filled with dark amusement. "I wonder, how far will loyalty go when survival's on the line?" Harry managed to pin Marv against the chair, slamming the restraints into place. Marv screamed, his voice echoing in the chamber as the spikes closed around him. "Please, Harry," Marv begged, tears streaming down his face. Harry hesitated, his hand trembling over the final lever that would seal the trap. For a moment, guilt flickered in his eyes. "Don't make me do this, Marv," Harry growled. The timer hit 10 seconds. Kevin's voice softened, almost sympathetic. "Time's running out. Choose, or the game ends for both of you." Harry's face twisted with rage and fear. "Damn you, kid!" With a roar, he slammed the lever down. The chair hissed as it activated, the spikes tightening around Marv. His screams pierced the air, cutting off abruptly as the trap completed its grisly work. The chamber fell silent. Harry stumbled back, his legs giving out beneath him. He stared at the chair, now empty save for the bloodstains that dripped onto the floor. Kevin's mask reappeared on the screen, his voice calm and deliberate. "Congratulations, Harry. You've survived. But at what cost?" Harry's head snapped up, his eyes blazing with fury. "You're a monster," Kevin chuckled. "I didn't make the choice, Harry. You did. Just like you chose to break into my home. Just like you chose to destroy lives. Today, you learned what it's like to be powerless." The door behind Harry slid open, revealing a dark hallway. "Go," Kevin said. "Your freedom is waiting, but know this, you'll never escape what you've done." Harry staggered to his feet, his breath ragged. He glanced back at the chair one last time before stumbling through the exit. As he disappeared into the darkness, the chamber's lights dimmed. Kevin stepped out from behind a concealed panel, his jigsaw mask in one hand. He stared at the bloodied chair, his expression unreadable. "No escape without understanding," he murmured. Later, in his underground workshop, Kevin sat before a new set of blueprints. His mask lay on the table, its painted spirals catching the light. He reached for a small notebook, flipping to a fresh page. At the top, he scrawled 2 words: new target. Beside it, he taped a photograph, a grinning chocolatier in a top hat standing before a massive factory. Kevin's lips curved into a chilling smile as he closed the notebook.